If you run a home service business and you're struggling to cut through the noise and get attention for your business, then one of the most powerful skills you can acquire is the ability to use persuasion, whether that's written word, video, audio, or imagery. Then continue watching, because I'm going to be diving deep into how to learn from some of the greatest copywriting minds in history so that your messages not only cut through the noise, but they silence your competition and put you into a league of your own. So the reason you need to learn this is attention is today's currency. It's at an all-time low because people are bombarded with thousands of messages every single day. And if you're boring, then you could say goodbye to that attention. But if you can capture attention and get good at entertainment and the ability to grab somebody from what they're doing and hold that attention, this is a skill that will allow you to essentially print money. In this guide, I'm going to teach you how to craft those messages that not only capture attention, but persuade people to do whatever you wish. So the first key is understanding your audience. If you don't understand what makes your audience tick, how can you expect to speak to them in a way that's going to make them listen? Let's take a look at what some of the greatest copywriters have had to say about this. Eugene Schwartz emphasized the importance of understanding the levels of awareness and sophistication. Where is your market at, and how are you going to meet them at where they are? Ogilvy said the consumer isn't a moron. You need to speak to them in a respectful way and understand them, and this requires gathering insights into their preferences, their pain points, their behaviors. Dan Kennedy stressed the importance of the right audience. You've got to match the market to the message. Gary Halbert, get into the heart and mind of the audience. Claude Hopkins, test and measure. Robert Collier, enter the conversation going on in the prospect's mind. As you can see, you need to first understand where your prospect is and what they're thinking. And once you do that, you can start looking at some of the fundamentals of persuasion. These are ways that will allow your communication to be more effective and impactful. Reciprocity. You do something for me and I owe you one. Commitment and consistency. They're more likely to follow through if you can get them to shake their head and agree with what you're saying. Social proof. Do you have backing? Do you have reviews? Testimonials? Do you have a following? Are you an authority figure? Do people like you? Is there a scarcity in the resource that you're selling, whether that's urgency or scarcity? Can you introduce emotional appeals? These will allow you to create more vivid imagery, better stories, language that make people feel rather than just listening. Anchoring. This is strategically placing certain pieces of information or delivering it in such a way that it's used to compare against. Contrasting, showing different ideas, showing a high price option first and then showing a lower price one so that the contrast is between that high price item and that second price seems like a deal in comparison to that first one. Utility, cognitive bias. It's very hard to change beliefs that are already formed. Loss aversion. People are far more motivated to avoid losses than to achieve gains. People don't want to lose something they already have. Power of framing. How you deliver something has a strong correlation to how it's received. The mere exposure effect. Repetition. Are people seeing things consistently? This is why things like putting out regular content is really important. Repeating the same message. People often think that they're saying things too many times, but we often need to be reminded more often than we need new information. Primacy and recency effect. First and last are often remembered better than something in the middle. So place the important parts of your communication messages at the front or at the back. As I said, scarcity and urgency, storytelling, foot in the door techniques, etc. You can grab this document below, but the sooner you learn to incorporate as many of these techniques as possible into your messages, the better off you'll be. Once we have this allows us to form our message, and it all starts with the headline. If you can't get somebody to read the headline, they're not going to read the rest of the message. David Ogilvy famously said, when you have written your headline, you've spent 80 cents of your dollar. And the key elements of a great headline is it has to be very clear and understood immediately. It has to be really relevant to what it is. It has to be extremely relevant to your target audience, address their needs, their interests, their problem, whatever it is you're trying to convey. It has to be highly benefit oriented, ideally have urgency, emotional appeal, be specific, pique curiosity, and really be centered around one big core idea. Don't try and get your headline to speak to a number of different ideas. It has to be one. Then of course you've got different headline structures and formats. There's how-tos, there's lists, there's question headlines, there's command headlines, reason why headlines. The list goes on. The best thing to do is to find anything that really grabs your attention and save it into a swipe file so that when the time comes to come up with your own messages, you have a gigantic list of things that you can just draw on for inspiration, things that have already been proven. And as I've said before, you also want to use words that are psychological triggers. You want words that are not boring. Boring doesn't sell. Unique, intriguing, curiosity piquing. All of these sort of things will have far greater results than those that just speak plain language. If you look at some of the best headlines ever written, you'll see that they use words like new, free, proven, secret, instant, guaranteed, easy, limited. There's a whole list of these words that trigger emotions. And then you can combine these into phrases. Again, introducing scarcity and urgency, leveraging proof. We're going over the things we talked about earlier. Once you've built your headline and got someone to read through the headline, its job is done. The job of the headline is not to sell. It is simply to get the person to read the next section, the lead. All copywriting is a sequence of phrases that lead to the next phrase. And if you can get them to read one, then they read two, read three. And this is the whole goal, to get them to read enough, ideally in an engaging way where they don't even realize that they're being sold to. Stories often have the ability, or great writing has the ability, to bypass our logical brain. And that is your job. So you write the headline, you get them into the lead. The lead is essentially the opening of your copy that's going to read their attention and carry on with the headline and get them to read the body. The hook draws them in, sets the stage for what follows. The lead's not just the first sentence, but often will extend into the first paragraph or two, creating the foundation for the rest of your content. as you can see, we've got our big idea, we've got the campaign lead, which is going to lead into the argument. This forms the thesis, all leading up finally at the end to the offer. So the purpose of a lead is to engage the reader. You want to grab their attention, spark interest, set the tone, provide a preview. All great leads focus on one big idea, as I said earlier, and leads fall into one of 6 categories. A great book about this is called Great Leads. There's the offer lead. This, of course, is something direct, an offer. Get 50% off your first purchase. The next is a promise lead. You're promising something. Lose 10 pounds in just 4 weeks without dieting. The problem solution. Struggling with sleepless nights. The problem. Discover our all-natural sleep aids for restful nights. The solution. The secret lead is you're hinting at something. Discover the secret to flawless skin that dermatologists won't tell you. The proclamation lead. This is a huge, bold statement. The revolutionary app that will change the way you manage your finances. And then finally, the story lead. When Jane Doe lost her job, she never imagined she'd become a successful entrepreneur within a year. Depending on the market's awareness level is going to determine what type of lead you want to use. So of course, if you're addressing a totally aware market, you might want to go directly with an offer. However, if you're writing to a totally unaware market where you might need to introduce an idea and educate them, you might want to use a story lead. So when you're crafting your leads, as I said, it's going to be based on the awareness level. So if you're writing an offer lead, this is straightforward and direct. It's when the offer is highly appealing and valuable. You want to highlight the offer. You want to state the benefits. You want to add scarcity and urgency and have a call to action. If you're writing a promise lead, you're making a bold statement that's addressing desires and problems. And it's about promising a benefit that the reader wants. You first have to identify the benefit, then make a clear promise that is in line with what they want. Then, of course, you have to support it with evidence. One thing to make a claim is something totally different to be able to make it believable with evidence. And then you want to encourage them to take the next step. If it's a problem solution lead, you need to start by highlighting the problem and usually agitating it. So identify the problem, acknowledge the pain, agitate the pain, introduce the solution and its benefits, and then get them to take action. With a secret lead, you're teasing a little known secret that is supposed to pique curiosity, something that makes them feel like they're gaining exclusive knowledge. Hint at the secret, build that curiosity, imply exclusivity, and then again, encourage them to read on. If you're doing a proclamation lead, you're using something bold and attention grabbing. This is meant to totally knock somebody off guard. It's a bold statement, something really impactful. Then of course you have to back up the claim. Again, highlight the benefits and then get them to take the next action. And finally, with the story lead, you're compelling the reader with a story or an anecdote. Stories are powerful tools because, as I said, well-written stories allow us to bypass that logical brain and suck somebody in so that they don't even realize what's happening. You start with the hook, introduce the characters, describe the situation, present the solution, and highlight the benefits. So again, you have to match the lead to the audience. So identify your audience. Who are they? What are they thinking? What are their pains and problems? What do they desire? Once you have that, take their level of awareness and decide what type of lead you want to use. This all translates to any sort of communication. As I mentioned before, it could be blog posts, it could be video scripts, it could be simple images. There is messages hidden in everything around us, and by learning to incorporate that will give you the ability to get people to take the action that you want. But of course, it's easy to make mistakes and get carried away with cliches or embellishing what you're trying to say, misleading people, trying to say too much at once, and losing the clarity and the relevance of your one core message. Like anything, this is a skill. The more you do it, the better you get. And so if you've got this right, you've written your headline, your lead has led someone into the body, and now you have to write the body copy. And this is where you're proving, you're backing up what you've said in the headline and the lead, providing evidence and proof, adding your benefits and making it benefit rich rather than feature rich, handling objections, filling it with social proof and why what you're saying should be believed, prompting them to take action because you have limited resources or there's a limited time deadline. And then finally, you must be very clear in what action you want them to take. Don't assume that people are going to know what needs to be done. They have to be told. And finally, this is highly dependent on the market that you're writing to, but as a general rule of thumb, you want to write at a low grade level, 3 or 4 grade level, keep the language simple, use an active voice, be conversational, focus on benefits over features, use strong headlines and subheadlines, incorporate social proof, break your sentences into smaller sets, great urgency and scarcity, and include a clear call to action. Of course, edit and proofread, use tools like Grammarly or Hemingway app, and then testing is critical. You're never going to have all the answers. The only way to know is to test and refine. Use visuals where you have to break up the text. Use bullet points to draw attention to certain things, such as fascination bullets. These are meant to intrigue the reader. Benefit bullets, feature bullet, proof bullets, and the list goes on. Take this document, read it, study it, practice writing. Anytime you have to write something, even if it's as simple as an email, have this document open and just test out a few of the different things. You'll find that the more you do it, the more it becomes second nature and the better at it you get. So again, you can grab this document below this video, as well as a bunch of other documents that go through everything you're going to need to grow your home service business. And of course, finally, the last point of great copy is risk reversals and guarantees. Everything has a risk associated with it, even things that cost no money. The risk is a loss of time. And if you can significantly reduce the perceived risk of whatever it is you're trying to sell, the results are going to be that much better. The different types of risk: money back guarantee, free trials, performance guarantees, no risk memberships or subscriptions, price protection, satisfaction. And of course, you can combine all of these. Risk reversals are going to help you build trust too. People are often afraid to use too bold of a risk reversal, but the negative impact of having an amazing risk reversal is often going to far offset the negative risk or the amount of people that will actually take you up on that money back guarantee or whatever it is you're offering. But when creating your risk reversals, you must be very clear in what the terms of the risk reversal are. Be honest and transparent. Again, risk reversals are meant to instill trust into your market. They're not meant to trick somebody. And finally, using bonuses and premiums to put people over the top in making a decision into what it is you're trying to sell. They increase the perceived value. They're going to differentiate you from your competitors. They often will encourage immediate action, especially if they have a scarcity or urgency component. They reduce the risk because they increase the value. And these can come in numerous different forms, whether it's informational products, physical bonuses, extra services, exclusivity, discounts. So if you want to take your messaging to the next level, then grab this document below, study it, and let me know the difference that it makes in your business. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.